Have you ever seen someone treated like dirt just because they looked poor? Because of the clothes they wore or the color of their skin? That's exactly what happened on the most beautiful day of Emma's life, her wedding day. The grand hall sparkled with gold and white decorations. Laughter, music, and the smell of roses filled the air. But not everyone was smiling. Near the corner of the hall stood a man wearing an old suit, James. His shoes were dusty, his hands rough, but his eyes were calm. When Mrs. Linda noticed him, her smile disappeared. "Who invited that man?" she whispered sharply to her husband. Mr. Robert glanced over, frowned, and said, "Probably one of David's low-class relatives. Look at his clothes. He doesn't belong here." They didn't know that the man they were mocking had done something far greater than any of them could imagine. As James slowly walked toward the buffet, people began to whisper. A few guests laughed under their breath. One woman said, "Maybe he's here to clean the tables." Another replied, "No, he's probably lost." But James didn't react. He quietly looked at the decorations, his eyes soft but full of something, pain maybe. When Emma saw him, she frowned too. "David, why is that man here?" she asked. David looked at her with confusion. "He's a guest. I invited him," but Emma turned away. "He doesn't fit in with my family." Then, in front of everyone, Mr. Robert walked up to James. "Excuse me, sir," he said coldly. "This is a private event. Maybe you're at the wrong wedding." The entire hall went silent. Everyone stared. James lowered his eyes, nodded, and simply said, "I'm sorry if I made anyone uncomfortable." His voice was calm, but his eyes, they held a secret. As James quietly stepped aside, a little boy accidentally spilled juice near him. James knelt down, helped him clean, and smiled kindly. The guests only laughed harder. They saw a poor man cleaning a mess, but none of them knew he was the reason that hall even existed that night. Somewhere inside, David looked worried. He knew James wasn't what he seemed, but he decided to stay silent for now. Before the chapter ends, let me ask you something. If you saw someone being insulted like James, would you speak up or stay silent like everyone else? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe. Have you ever met someone who stayed silent when they were insulted, but you could feel power in their silence? That's how James was that night. Everyone laughed, yet he stood there calm, as if he already knew something they didn't. The music began again, and the hall came back to life. The guests danced, toasted, and smiled as if nothing had happened. But David couldn't focus. He kept glancing at James, standing quietly near the corner, watching the celebration he wasn't welcome in. Something about that man's eyes felt familiar. After a while, the food was served. Silver plates, crystal glasses, everything looked perfect. But as James moved forward to take a seat, Mr. Robert stopped him again. "These seats are reserved for family," he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. People turned to look. Some chuckled. Mrs. Linda added, "Maybe we can bring him something outside. It will be more comfortable for his type." James looked up gently. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'm fine standing." He smiled, not out of weakness but something deeper, maybe forgiveness. He slowly walked toward the open balcony, away from the noise, where only David followed him. "James," David said quietly, "I'm sorry for what they said. I wish they knew who you really are." James looked at him kindly. "It doesn't matter what they see. What matters is what they'll learn." His words carried weight, but David didn't fully understand them. Inside, Emma's father raised a toast. "To my daughter's new life, may our family always stay above the rest." The guests clapped, unaware that their pride was about to crack open like glass. Moments later, a wedding planner rushed to Mr. Robert, whispering something in his ear. His face turned pale. "What do you mean the payment came from an unknown donor?" he asked sharply. The planner nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. Someone paid the full amount for the wedding, the hall, the food, everything, but they refused to give their name." The laughter faded. Mr. Robert looked around the hall, confused. For the first time that night, he felt small. James, standing by the balcony, slowly turned his gaze back toward them, calm, knowing, and heartbreakingly silent. The truth was close, very close, but they still couldn't see it. Have you ever judged someone before knowing their story? Tell me honestly in the comments. It's okay to admit it. We've all done it once. Make sure you subscribe. Have you ever seen pride turn into fear in just a few seconds? That's what began to happen inside that shining wedding hall. One moment everyone was laughing, and the next, whispers started spreading like wildfire. Mr. Roberts' voice trembled as he demanded answers. Who would spend so much money on our wedding and not even show up? He asked. The wedding planner shook her head. Sir, the payment came from a man named James Carter. I think he's here tonight. The entire hall froze. Emma, David, and all the guests turned toward the quiet man standing near the balcony. The same man they mocked, the same man they told to leave. James slowly stepped forward. His eyes looked calm, but everyone could feel the weight of what was about to happen. Mrs. Linda forced a laugh. That can't be true. He doesn't even look like he can afford the taxi to get here. But David spoke softly. It's true, I invited him. James helped me when no one else did. Gasps filled the room. Emma's father stepped forward, his voice shaking. Why would you pay for our wedding? He asked. James looked around the hall, at the people who laughed at him, at the woman who threw insults, and at the man who told him to leave. Then he said quietly, because once your daughter saved my son's life. Everyone was silent. Even the music stopped. James continued, years ago, Emma helped a little boy who was lost near the park. She gave him food, called for help, and stayed with him until I came. That boy was my son. I promised myself that day I would repay that kindness, no matter how long it took. Tears began to form in Emma's eyes. The proud family that once looked down on James now stood speechless. Mr. Roberts swallowed hard, unable to speak. He had insulted the very man who gave them everything they were celebrating tonight. James smiled softly. I didn't come here for thanks. I came here to bless your marriage. Then he turned to leave quietly, his presence leaving a silence more powerful than any words. The crowd was still. For the first time that night, everyone realized money can't buy respect, and pride can't hide truth. Sometimes the people we look down on are the ones who hold us up when we fall. If this moment touched your heart, make sure to subscribe. Have you ever realized someone's value only after they walked away? That's what the hall felt like when James left. The music stopped, laughter vanished, and the same people who mocked him now couldn't even meet each other's eyes. Emma stood frozen, tears rolling down her face. Her heart was heavy with guilt. She ran toward the door, shouting, James. Please wait. The cold night air hit her face as she found him outside, walking slowly toward his car, the same old one everyone laughed at earlier. She caught his hand. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't remember the boy in the park was your son. James smiled gently. You didn't have to remember. Kindness isn't about being remembered, it's about being real. Behind her, David and Mr. Robert arrived. The man who once looked down on him now looked down in shame. James, Mr. Robert said, his voice trembling, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I judged you before even knowing you. James looked at him quietly. Sometimes it takes humiliation to open proud eyes, he said softly, but it's never too late to change. The wind blew, carrying silence between them. Then, to everyone's surprise, Mr. Robert bent down and touched James's hand. Thank you for showing us what respect truly means. His eyes filled with tears, something no one had ever seen before. As they returned to the hall together, guests whispered again, but this time not out of mockery, out of shame and respect. Emma took the mic, her voice shaking. Tonight, I learned that a wedding without humanity means nothing. The man we insulted gave us this day, and I'll never forget that. Everyone clapped softly, some cried. Even the workers who were serving food smiled through their tears. James stayed only a few minutes longer. Before leaving, he looked at the couple and said, May your marriage be built on respect, not status. Then he walked out quietly, leaving behind a silence that spoke louder than applause. That night, Emma wrote a note and placed it where he sat. To the man who taught me what real class is, thank you for staining our pride and cleansing our hearts. If someone ever changed the way you see humanity, even with one act of kindness, share it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because real stories like this remind us that love and respect have no color, no price, and no pride.